Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, a very warm welcome. My name is Paul Overton, and I'm with Mike, co-chairs of the Carnival Committee. It's great to see you here this evening, and those of you who are not members of the committee, but have very kindly volunteered to be part of Carnival 2021, we are extremely grateful. This meeting is a culmination of a lot of work that's gone on since, well, basically almost since the summer of last year, but certainly since January, where we have followed the government gateways as we try to put together a programme of events that will enable our community, Malmesbury and the surrounding villages to have a really good time during the summer. One of those things, one of those factors that have driven all the preparations that have gone on so far is to recognise that the COVID pandemic has had huge implications, not only for the country, but for the way we go about delivering something like Carnival. However, all that notwithstanding, we have put together, as you will know from looking at Jackdaw and around town, a phenomenal programme of events again for Carnival this year. But it doesn't work unless we've got people on the ground to actually help us deliver it, which is why volunteers who are here this evening and those who I hope will continue to keep signing up to our webpage and offer their time need to be made aware of the process that we've gone through to get to this point and the kind of factors that you need to bear in mind, not only for your well-being, but for the well-being of those people from the community who attend all the various events that we're going to deliver as from this coming weekend and right through until Saturday, September the 4th, when we very much hope we'll round it off with a magnificent procession. So it's good to see you here. I'm going to hand over to two of our colleagues, especially from the committee, who have worked really hard on Miles, who's going to talk through all the health and safety and COVID requirements issues, and Andy, who many of you will recognise has been instrumental in delivering procession over many years. And we managed to hang on to him when we became a committee a couple of years ago.
You still haven't sent me that check.
I know, but you know, we're working towards it now. We'll get you another drink. No expenses, that's right, it was like So it's good to see you here. The intention is to use this hour to give you a context that we're operating in, that you'll be operating in, and to give you a chance to ask any questions you may have before we close the meeting, which enables the committee the steering committee to have a quick check as to where we're at with all the events we've got planned. So without further ado, I'm going to step out of the way, and Miles, if you'd like to... Cheers.
Right, I'm not addressing many people in my life before. As Paul said, thanks ever so much to everyone who's volunteering for Carnival this year. Obviously there's a whole suite of things that we need some additional assistance for, so the more hands we get on deck, very much the better. So just to quickly run through these things, we're focusing on health and safety with the volunteering, including accommodation, health and safety and logistics as well. So we're going to cover both in this. The C word, sadly, we've got to have a look at. There's your safety to consider. There's a sort of brief overview of generally how we run the events, the common factors in between the events. A few comments on specific things that we do that are specific to particular events, things like procession, and questions. And really underline, if anyone would like to ask any questions, either Ben or Jory, more than happy to take those on board. It's all a bit of a learning process for everyone, so questions are accepted. Okay. I don't know who Max Bygroves was. I didn't like that title. I'm too young for Max Bygroves. But this very quick background. This is the sort of site that I used to work on. I'm trying to start some credentials here. This is a site in Manchester, which is by the Manchester Ship Canal. We're digging up and treating heavily contaminated soils, so they're full of petrol and diesel and all this sort of stuff. So your health and safety risks on this site, you can choose between being squashed by machines, falling into the excavations, falling into the canal. You can be poisoned by the petrol and diesel that are pulling out those blue things there. We're also pulling out actual vapours, which would explode if you didn't treat them right. And the bridge that I'm standing on to take that photo, there's some lovely lads up there that chuck concrete blocks down onto our engineers as they ran underneath the bridge. So, you know, there was pretty much everything. There's also a high pressure sewer running just through here. And I did choose at one point to stick an excavator on top of it and start digging a hole until my rather educated engineer came up to me and suggested that that might not be the best place to actually dig a large hole. So that's the sort of thing we were looking at. So that's what I call sort of fairly high risk site. Procession, Carnival, the whole, you know, all of that is low risk. Let's be quite honest about that. It's relatively low risk, but that isn't to say that there aren't, you know, health and safety considerations that we need to think about. So if we go on this one. The long and winding road. So despite the fact that it looks like a sort of check together ad hoc sequence of events, we are answerable to Wiltshire Council. They are the regulatory body for a health and safety standpoint and permits for things like road closures for processional etiquette lane. We have to apply for events on the highway for those 2 events, close the car parks. For that, Wiltshire Council require us to do risk assessments, and we've done risk assessments for all events, not just for those where we're doing road closures. Those risk assessments identify the risks of each of our activities. Those risks then feed into event management plans, and we demonstrate in those how we mitigate the risks, and also into the entry forms. So, for example, the entry form for a procession points out that there's a power cable running across Gloucester Road, just above your house on Gloucester Road, and it probably wouldn't be sensible to have a float that goes above about 5 metres high. So there's a sort of sequence of events in this. With COVID specifically, we've talked about COVID on the website and in the Tourist Information Centre, and we've split the COVID mitigations into 2 parts. There's the what we call the community responsibility, which is how we would hope members of the public will act at our events, how we're asking them to act at our events. And that, again, we can split into general guidance and some specific guidance, specifically to things like petticoat lane, etc. And then there's the responsibility that we have as Carnival. So in terms of our organisation of the events, what responsibilities are on us, things like ventilation in the rooms, etc., etc. Okay. So, quick look at a couple of international COVID models. It's an old joke. It seemed to get a laugh last time, so this is the closest you'll get to a holiday abroad this year. In the UK, the 4 main things that we're looking at is hand, space, space, and fresh air. So the mitigations that we're putting into place for all of our events are really based around those 4 really simple factors. So, you know, anything that you look at and you think, ooh, you know, no leave before space, etc., etc. It's, you know, the guidelines are really simple. Okay. And yeah, it's all about cheese, really. It's quite simple. Swiss cheese model from Australia. That's the 3 countries we've covered now. Don't be too concerned about all the text on this. It's a really good graphic illustration that to mitigate risk, and risk in any form on the left-hand side, obviously we've sort of shown COVID there, the more layers you have in place, the greater the chance are of protecting your receptor at the end. And accidents happen when people shortcut and take some of these layers of cheese out. So we've built in a whole series of mitigations, which will become apparent as we go through these slides. The more we have in place, the greater the chances that we can safely run Carnival and safely manage any COVID risk. So today, you know, I've got to admit, I'm pretty happy that we're where we need to be. We've got everything up on the website, we're getting the messages out there. But from the start of Carnival, 31st of July, it really is all about behaviour. So all the documents are in place, but if we don't implement those documents, that's when we start getting problems. So that's back to my original slide. I'm over the high pressure sewer by the Manchester Ship Canal. We knew it was there. we have the risk assessments, we have the method statements. Don't put an excavator on top of the high pressure sewer, I put an excavator on top of it. That was my behaviour. That was kind of my epiphany for health and safety. Okay. So general COVID mitigations then. And again, these are all our layers of, these are our bits of Swiss cheese. So indoor, we've decided that we're running at 50% capacity, which is effectively what happened during step 3. So, you know, despite the fact that we've opened up in step 4, as a safety measure, we're saying, you know, we're going to run our indoor events at 50% capacity, greater social distancing. We're recommending face masks, that's all we can do. We can't enforce that, we're just recommending those when people are standing and moving around. We're recommending that people have the COVID-19 app on their phones that it's running. We're also doing contactless payments, so we don't have to handle cash, you know, there's less of the transactions around the place. Entries to venues, so ticket checks, etc. We want to put those in a well-ventilated location. So we've got numbers of people going past. Whoever's there taking the tickets, the better ventilated it is, the better. And we'll also put a bottle of hand sanitizer there, so you know, quite regular hand washing. At the venue entry, because the risk assessment have defined this as a risk early on, we've designed our tickets such that they can be checked without touching them. So all someone needs to do is just show whoever's at the entry the ticket, we've got a number on it, we're saying what the event is, etc. So those tickets are required for entry. And we can tick off, we'll print off a checklist of the tickets that have been issued, and then we can just cross those off, and that controls our numbers in the event. We're running test and trace. Again, it's voluntary. And that will be at the next table. So we'll have one table which will be the ticket collection, and the second table will be test and trace. And because it's voluntary, we're not going to man that table. We'll just point it out and say, if you want to scan in the QR code or fill in the details, then please do so. Catherine asked a question last week actually about those without mobile phones, etc. And that is one of the mitigations on top of all of these. But the fact there's paper copy there means that people without mobile phones, without the technology, you know, can leave their details as part of test and trace. Okay. We have to, as Carnival, so Carnival's a charity, everyone on the committee is a volunteer, obviously everyone, all of yourselves are volunteers that are coming to Carnival. We actually have a duty of care ticket. So I've just asked you to, as part of fulfilling our duty of care, do ever think about the factors that you're seeing up there. Standard factors, I mean, I guess everyone's been running, have them running through their heads at some point over the last 18 months. But things like clinical vulnerability, etc., etc. So any concerns on any of those areas, then please have a chat with any of us in the committee about that. There's a range of events. If you'd like to volunteer at other events, we can do that. Total flexibility.
Quick question, Miles. Will we want volunteers that run at a bar or taking tickets for us to wear masks as well?
We can't enforce it. If you prefer to wear a mask, then it can only mitigate risk. Yeah, is my view on that one. If I'm behind the bar, I have to be honest, I will be wearing a mask.
Yeah. Because if you're standing up and moving around, that kind of goes in with the other people. Yeah.
Right. So the general thing, some of the things that are common between all the events, a lot of the indoor events will be having a bar. So we'll try and run a one-way system across the bar, such that people are just moving in a single direction rather than sort of mixing and milling around. Similar to the situation that was in operation in the supermarkets, the one way in, one way out. Minimise contact, and that involves anything that's on glasses, bottles, contactless payments, etc., and hand sanitizer as well. Issues with people. Malmesbury is a lovely place. We all know that. I honestly don't think we can recall a single issue with people at any point during Carnival. Nothing particularly serious, nothing serious anyway. But in the very unlikely event of problems, we're volunteers. It's a non-confrontational approach, and we just advise the event lead. So the event will have an identified lead. Just have a chat with them. Tidy up. Says it all. Every event needs a tidy up afterwards. Generally, the assistance is much appreciated in all of those things. Even after a very, very long day, we're sort of walking down the road with black plastic sacks, picking up bits of rubbish and all sorts. That happens at every event. So indoor events then. Anyone who's had the pleasure of going in a rousing building will recognise the photo. So we've got a number of talks in the rousing buildings. It's got lovely audio visual in there. So the logistical aspects that we'd love help from volunteers for. Set up chairs and tables, set up the entry, check the ventilation. So we've been through all of the venues. We've checked the ventilation. That's a rousing building. It's got an extraction. It's got a mechanical ventilation system that we can set to extraction. We just want to make sure we maximise the ventilation in the venue. Once the event is up and running, the bar again, and a couple of the events will do table service at. The quiz, I think, we do table service at.
Yeah. Especially for questions.
Yeah. And then breakdown of the event afterwards, clearing up glasses and plates, chairs and tables, and again, that's a lovely thing that's at the tidy up as well. So we're getting on to the bigger events here, Music in the Cloisters. I don't know if everyone's been to one of the Music in the Cloisters events. Fantastic. 2019 we had 500 people sat in the cloister gardens. I mean, it was really, really nice event. So this is a picture from 2019. As you can see, the gazebos at that point were actually put up by a professional company. Maybe we're putting up our own gazebos this year. The area that they're stood on, we can't put pegs in the ground there because I don't know if you see the uplighters on the Abbey, there's electric cables that we need to avoid there. The pathway we need to keep clear because it's quite a nice way. And this building over here is a bar. We also need to put the bar up, we need to stop the bar, etc. So you can see there's quite a few things to do. Once the event's up and running, ticket sales, because Music in the Cloisters will be is ticket only at the door because of weather constraints. If it pours down with rain, then we won't be able to hold it. So we only sell tickets at the gate. We've got to run the bar. We've got to monitor the perimeter. We'll have access to the Abbey toilets. The Abbey would like us to have someone sat inside the building and just making sure no one goes astray inside the Abbey. And obviously enjoy the music. There'll be a whole series of bands there. Should be really nice event. And then breakdown afterwards. Again, it's a difficult aspect. Everyone's disappearing, everyone's tired, but we've still got to break marquees down. We've got to load the bar stocks, get them out of the cloister garden, back in someone's car, and do a tidy up on the back as well. So logistically, there's quite a lot to do with that.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
So have you checked whether or not the Abbey Cafe will be open on Saturday? Any Saturday that we're using for the
Yeah, I've spoken to the other companies, and they will be operating during the cloisters, but not for anything.
So
They'll be operating for Music in the Cloisters.
right,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, nothing else. So, for example, we won't be
No,
affected by it. I mean, they could open inside.
no, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think that goes up. Road closures. Road closures is obviously quite an issue because there's two events. There's Petticoat Lane and Procession. We have to implement road closures as part of that. The road closures obviously are risk assessed. We've done them every year that we run those events. So we've taken that experience of doing the road closures to put an approach together, and we'll run over that again in steward briefings before those events. So if you're involved in a road closure, just a quick recap on this, we've got no legal authority to stop or direct traffic. So the road closure lifted when we pull the barriers across the road. We have to do that with a gap in the traffic. But the streets that we close off are generally relatively quiet. There's always a gap, and we're able to do that. And we've got the road signage and the barriers to think about. So there's crowd barriers that go across various places, and we've got all of the appropriate road signage in place, which is part of our formal submission to Wiltshire Council. So we talk specifically about what signage is in what location, extend right out from Dyson's out to the 49 roundabout, the Priory roundabout, etc. So there's quite a spread of signs to get out there. And once the road closures are in place, and it's quite, we didn't run into an issue with it, but we have to apply a bit of discretion because it's inevitable that we can't let everyone know about these road closures. So there were a couple of occasions where carers would hit the road closure and they would really need to get through. So, we have to apply a bit of discretion. Yes, we can let you through. We might have to steward you through the crowds or whatever, but, it's not 100% iron road closure until, things like procession are in place, in which case, yes, absolutely. But prior to that, a bit of discretion, we can apply a bit of discretion. And obviously, if the emergency services come in, we operate under the guidance of the emergency services at that point. All right. Right, Petticoat Lane, so again, we're cranking up the size of the events. Petticoat Lane, more or less, I guess, we're looking at about 1,000 people probably, plus or minus, coming to the event over the course of the period it's open, so 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's an idea that Robert Veal took some years back. I guess everyone's familiar with it, but we close off the upper High Street. There's about 60 stalls that we put all the way up the High Street. So the logistics for that, just to touch on the COVID aspects. So apart from the general COVID guidance, so things like contactless payments, we've also looked at it and we've said the food stalls that we have in Petticoat Lane, we'll put those in the Market Cross, because if we do that, if people are congregating at the food stalls, if they're standing there eating their food, they've got plenty of space to do it, rather than blocking the streets up here. So, again, there's all of these layers of mitigation that have gone into play in the planning process. And again, the general logistics, road closure signs, we've got to mark all the pitches out, so we've got to make sure that we can get 30 odd pitches on either side of the upper High Street. We've got to direct the stall holders. It does turn into a bit of a melee because there's 60 stalls to set up. Everyone drives in with a car, they've got to unload their marquee, they've got to unload all of their goods, and then they've got to move on as quick as possible to let the next people through and to get out and park. So that is quite a melee organising that one. We've got to implement and man the road closures that form part of Petticoat Lane, and then afterwards we've got to perhaps give the guys a handbrake and the stalls down. Again, manage the car movements as they bring the cars in to reload them up. And tidy up again. And the other things, obviously, help the community enjoy Petticoat Lane. And 2019, there was an absolutely delightful guy with an ice cream van up in the Market Cross, and we were stood at the bottom of the High Street by St Dennis Lane, and he could see us stood there, dropped shoulders, and he pulled over and he said, "Right, guys, who wants ice cream?" And he just gave all the stewards that were stood there an ice cream. It was, just really nice. It was fantastic.
You got
a big left.
You got lots of donuts as well.
That's right. Can't guarantee it, obviously, but it's just lovely that everyone pitches in. The guy that's out last week recognises whatever everyone puts in there. Really, really good. Right. Right. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Andy. So Andy's run the procession safely for years. So everything we know about procession, we've picked Andy's brains about. Yeah. So enjoy through it.
Brain's empty now. Much like that, I'm not going to go into any huge great detail because there's an awful lot goes on procession day, starting right very early in the morning. Again, road signs, we've got to go out, all this kind of stuff. We'll get to who's going to be doing that a bit nearer the time. 4:30 on that afternoon, we have a full stewards briefing at the Riverside Centre where everything you need to know will be gone into in quite some detail. There'll be paper handouts and stuff as well. But just to give you an idea, Miles and his event-specific code of mitigations. We're trying to spread people around a bit more this year, invite them down to Park Road to look at the floats. We're pushing people into not commonly used viewing areas where there's a bit more space, like crosshays, car park, things like that. At Park Road, the road closure comes in at 4 o'clock. And our job's then to get the various groups to the various holding locations. So you've got the main floats on Park Road. I haven't gone through this with our steering group in any detail. It might be news to some of them, but we're probably moving the walking group muster point to the Vicks Football Club this year. Again, more space, better toilets, all sorts of reasons. Getting the floats parked, making sure their wheel walkers are in place. They're the very important ones who stand forced to one each corner of the big trucks and stop little children from being squashed when they run into the road after the coins, which they do. Procession starts, and again, the stewards will call them, wherever you are, you've been sent out to your various positions. Again, you'll be given those positions on the day. If you're a new volunteer to the procession, you won't be sent somewhere on your own. You'll always be sent with an old hand. So you won't be left hanging. We, at the right time at 5 o'clock, again, we pull the road closure signs into place, crowd barriers where they need to go, and they're well defined on maps, and we'll teach you all that. Gazebos need to go up at various places for event control, and coin distribution, again, that's something else we try and manage throughout the procession, gathering in the money that the floats have collected for us so they're not walking around with heavy buckets. One of the things we need to be very tight on this year is coin throwing. One of the things the police have brought up is they want us to try and stop anyone throwing coins at floats. Anyone who's been in marching for more than 5 minutes will know that is an almost impossible task. But we will try our best. We are encouraging the floats not to have fishing nets and things out, and to have their own bucket carriers walking alongside the floats to collect coins. But that's one we're going to need to be aware of on the day. I think you got another one. Yes. So around the routes, there's the general stewarding, which is just wandering around the highways on, making sure everyone's happy, managing the road closures and the coin collections. We have a bit of fun. I know those of you who've done this before know the procession comes along the top of the High Street up to Oxford Street, at which point the fire engine, which always leads, backs down Holloway and waits. The rest of the procession goes all the way around the crosshays and up the High Street and stops. At which point the fire engine then comes back along this way and parks up by the mirror. We then have, it's all hands on deck, and then need to swing the crowd barriers around and move the crowd who are watching from the top of the High Street up onto Oxford Street to allow the floats to come up the High Street and make that turn onto Gloucester Road. So that's where quite a few of you, if you do volunteer on procession day, will be. That's the bit that gives you the willies every year. Because if you push people back and push people back, you turn around and they just fill that space again. So it's great having more people on board this year. With more people on in that area, it's much easier to manage. Thank you. As the procession then goes back down Gloucester Road, we try and reopen the roads in blocks, in sequence, as early as we can, safely. And that's led by me on radios. So once the end of the procession has gone past the triangle, for instance, we can allow traffic back up the High Street and off down Bristol Street. So we manage it that way. We then have to take all the road closure signs out of the way, clear all the barriers back to where they've been collected by Nerdens the next day, tidy up, break down all the gazebos, and get all the coins into safe storage for the next week until we count them. There's a lot to do. But we have done it before, and it all seems to go fairly smoothly as long as we've got plenty of volunteers. Questions? Hello.
So I helped the last time we did this down at the bottom. Can you go back to the first procession on fire in Will and in Park Road? And there are a couple of bits that I thought there was some confusion, which is safety. The first one was that the motorised bicycles, that at the end of it, the motorised plates have a choice, basically, at the bottom of that hill. They either turn left and go to park, road and wait up, let people off. Some of them want to head off up the hill and get away. I don't know whether we pre-ask them to make that decision, because at the bottom of the hill, some of them went, oh, I don't know which way to go, am I going? So it might be worth in the entry or touching base with them all motorised, to make sure they know where they're going at the end. We've also got people moving at the end. You have to stop people moving across the road if the road has to go off. So I will shut them all into off road. Maybe
I think that's a valid point. Yeah, that hasn't been raised
the
before.
other bit was that at the start of it, it may be different because you've got pedestrian lot, somewhere slightly different. What happened was that all of the motorised stuff has to turn right up the hill as it starts off. And if these if nothing is coming down, like all the pedestrian people right away, because previously the pedestrian people started off.
Pedestrians were filtering in from here, but we always have the bands and the fire engine and all the things we pay for coming in this way. That's all going to be paid.
Better or for worse, for one reason or another, we had effectively closed off the road heading north on that map, and the crowd, quite a lot of people kind of came over that bit. Because all the lorries are turning right, there's a massive circle, and the kids were running out into the gap and they went back and trying to, and I thought that, and like at that particular pinch point, that was, I didn't feel that we quite had the right level of control, or whether we wanted people to be there, because obviously we have to get them out of the way, because the lorries can't turn on a corner, massive backswing comes out, but they were kind of pushing in, so we might want to make a decision as to whether we want to leave that, especially if you've got pedestrians and walk coming down like walking, then maybe the decision is made for us because you keep people on the pavements and you don't get them into the road at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
We may need to barrier off the pavements.
Yeah.
Right, that's just the roundabout.
That's another very good point. I think if we can get hold of our barrier order this year, Lindsay, we get a few extras down there, and also, to be perfectly bluntly, we've managed the session the last few years on not an ideal number of students. I need more people, which I think looks like we're going to have this year, so we'll have spare bodies to put down there. Point taken, thank you.
Do we know if the Vicks have any football match out there?
No, not.
Might be a crowd on pitch.
I'll talk to you about that in a bit once we've finished this. We've got agreement in principle, we've not actually booked anything yet. But yeah. So that's where we're at. Anybody else got any major queries or worries? If you have, keep it to yourself.
That's a quick question. Will the stewards have walkie-talkies and radio?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, they're all ideas. There's a limited number of radios, but each steward point will have a radio. Yeah, absolutely. We constantly use those for communication.
And there
We also
are
have
first
mobile
aiders?
phone.
First aiders?
Yeah, first aiders will be on site as well. They're brought in professionals. They sit outside on the triangle, so they've got immediate access to all of the session room if they need it. They have their own communications, but they have one of our VHF radios as well, so we can call them if we need to. We also make sure we've got as many of each other's mobile phone numbers as possible in case of repeater station breakdown or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. And now hand you over to Steve.
I think I've got one last slide, but leave that, actually, sorry, you're going to leave that one.
We can do
What we've spoken about with all this health and safety stuff doesn't put people off. We've got to run through it. We do have to run through it. The point that Owen's made about the situation on Patro Junction just underlines that we need extra people. So, again, really grateful for the help we can get, because a lot of this is just about stewarding, just watching what people are doing. And the other lovely thing about this, I didn't know that, I didn't see it before, but these three lovely people there are my neighbours. So, it just underlines how local the event is. Right, so what have we got? The one there. It's as I say, you know, we hope we don't put people off. I can, a real sort of hand on heart comment. Procession 2019, I remember walking out to Park Road, so we'd done all the paperwork, all the build-up, organised all the logistics, everything. Walked out of the steward brief on Park Road and saw what the community had done in terms of putting floats together. And it was just a massive buzz. It was just so nice to see. You just think, oh, right, it's all paperwork, it's all logistics, all health and safety down there. Then you walk out there and everyone is out there wanting to have a really good time and enjoy themselves. I think Liz, you said as well that you wanted to do it all again, didn't you? After you finished. So it's, you know, it's fantastic. It's a real, you know, it's a real number.
We should point out that although it looks like that lady's drinking a can of cider, I can assure you it was definitely water in there.
Yeah. I've got to be honest, I agonised about the wording of the risk assessment, and I said, I think I ended up with, don't drink to excess if you're on the float.
Wouldn't want anyone falling off the line pub float now, wouldn't mind.
Yeah, that was before health and safety was invented. Yeah, so generally, any questions about any aspect?
Just a sort of general one. In principle, we've got non-treated plastic and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what kind of environmental things we're doing with the mitigation or promotion, particularly if you're having glass
Yeah.
drinks and you get washed up and things.
Yeah.
As I better to have glass than plastic and all that sort of stuff.
I've got to be honest, I met with, it's Chester, isn't it, or was a couple of years ago, and Ash, I met with them in 2019, and we spoke about, you know, the attempt to bring the sustainability aspect in. There's, hand on heart, I support I support it. It's another layer. We had so much to do between recommit in 2019, and possibly again for this year because of COVID and all sorts, that we're struggling to add that. What we have got on the entry forms for both Petticoat Lane and Procession is a sustainability comment. You know, to say you cycle to the event, you walk to the event, all of this sort of stuff. It's something we would still like to include, but there's genuinely, it's almost a full-time job since about February, and you know, it's like, you know, we have to sort of draw a line on some aspects of it, but we really would like to bring it on. It's probably something to think about when things settle down a bit.
We do what we can, like, we do use glasses, don't we?
Yeah.
We do use glasses for the bar, and I've also investigated getting recycling and sort of units for Petticoat Lane followed by New Skin Forest. It's nearly 700 quid. That's just not sustainable.
Yeah,
What we need is a committee lead on sustainability with endurance for next year.
That's a very good point, yeah.
I engaged with church waste management in 2019, in exactly as Will has said, trying to just see what they could do about recycling and all sorts of
Yeah, I was just curious, being we've got at the stage of COVID, where it means more plastic, more thrown away. Specifically for one use, or if we bring out more glasses and more recycling.
Yeah.
Reusing, like recycling.
certainly for our bar events, you know, we'll try and set the glass, so we're not going to go down the single-use plastic use. I know the bars in town, it's a separate issue, you can't control that really, but because there's so many people drinking outside, and some of that is in single-use plastic. It's genuinely, I would love to do more, and Andy quite rightly says if someone's like put their hand up with sustainability lead, it's very, very expensive. Yeah.
Any more questions for Miles or Andy?
How do we actually go about matching events to volunteers?
Right, $6 million question.
I mean, do you have a list and we just tick the boxes or?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we've already made good headway on that. I've got a view of where we're short. So the best way for me to get in touch with everybody again.
One of the things we're going to do after this meeting is finished is actually look at the events list and see where, as Lizzie said, where the gaps are, and then come back to people and say, can you do this for us as well? And the other thing I wanted to say, I first want to say thanks to the two of you especially, and to Steve for putting all this together, because it's a huge amount of work. as well as trying to enjoy actually running a carnival for a cracking town and having a really good time doing it, is we do need lots of people at the big events. There's no doubt about that, to actually mitigate the kind of things that we've expressed concern about. The fact that you're sitting here means you volunteered. Thank you for that. What I'd like to say to you is, well, you must, if you go back into your own network and say, well, I'm doing it, and actually the strike is a decent bunch of people, so you come along and help me as well. And if you can all get at least 2 more people, then I know that Andy and Miles will feel an awful lot happier, as would we all, about what we're trying to offer. Bearing in mind that, although Carnival's been running for nearly 100 years, if the Jack goes to be in, it is entirely run by volunteers. So the more people we have saying, I can give 4 or 5 hours during the course of that week, or I can give the whole of that procession day to do whatever you want me to, that is a huge help. And it means that we can actually get on with ensuring that the people who are giving the talks, who are playing the music, who are doing the plays, can do it knowing that everything else is being taken care of. But having said that, you've only got to look at the programme to realise that a lot of thought and effort's gone into this process up to this point in time. But without all of us in this room, and those who weren't able to make tonight's meeting either from the committee or who had already signed up as a volunteer off the website, without all of us, it's just not going to work in the way that it should and we want it to. And I echo what Miles said. We came together as a group in 2019, and to walk down Park Road at the end of a month's worth of events and see the whole of the road full of people completely enjoying themselves on the floats, around the floats, was a real boost, a real tonic, and we're all part of that. So my thanks to you guys, especially as co-chair. My thanks to all of you for being here this evening. Lindsay will be reaching out to you. If you can reach out to some of your friends and say, come and be part of this. We're not short of high-vis jackets, we're not short of t-shirts, and you'll be part of one of the big community events of the year from Malmesbury. But thanks. Okay.
Why didn't want to drink?
No, I won't
I'll make
actually.
that.
Although, I'll finish with see we've been sharing a story. In 2019, I organised a meeting in the hall for a bunch of musicians who were going to play at the cloisters. And they were all names to me, when I set it up. And I went into the hall thinking, this is really exciting. And a bloke came in, and I said, hi, Carnival. I said, yeah, Carnival. So I said, what would you want? Well, I had a pint of whatever it was he was selling. I bought him a drink, and he was stood next to me at the bar. Then a couple of people I knew came in, and we started chatting. And I said, well, let's get this conversation going. This bloke had bugger all to do with Carnival. We even shut his hand, we did. But he enjoyed the drink. And it's that kind of opportunity to meet people. That being part of Carnival is very much about. Thanks for your time, Stephen, guys. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. All the best.